Brought to you by bedroombattlefields.com, this is the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. Back in 2023, I had a great chat with the legend himself, Andy Chambers. It was an absolute pleasure, and I'd like to think that we covered some ground that he doesn't usually get to explore. This week, I'm going to re-roll the conversation for the benefit of those who've recently discovered this podcast, and for those of us with slightly leaky middle-aged memories. Back in 2023, Andy was talking us through Xeogenesis, an anime-inspired mech skirmish game that he'd been working on. It has since successfully crowdfunded, and the game is now out there in the world. And in May 2024, Andy also took on a lead role on Warlord Games' Conflict 47 design team, so he's certainly been keeping busy. Alright, let's get into our conversation then, where Andy kicks us off by answering the question, why do you think this hobby still exists?
Because people like doing things with their hands is, I think, at the heart of it all. Ever since I started working in the 1990s, people have been predicting that digital video games, etc., would just edge out all of the tabletop market, tabletop games, modeling, miniatures, all that kind of stuff. Well, you can do it better on a computer. But the fact is that there's something intensely satisfying about doing it for yourself and doing it physically with your own fingers, whether it's gluing things together or painting them or pushing them around a tabletop. There's a physicality to it that I think really appeals to us on a fundamental level, and that doesn't seem to have gone away. If anything, it's kind of intensified as the other media's got better. And more, literally, I can have armies and paint them digitally in minutes. Why would I bother sticking them together? Because it's not really about that. It's not just about the having them. It's also the journey to getting them. And anybody who's like built an army or even a single miniature knows that there's a personal sort of level of personal investment that you put into it in the act of putting it together, painting it, imagining it to be yours. And I don't think that's gone away. If anything, it's got stronger for us over time. So I think that's why the hobby still exists.
What's your favourite book of all time?
I have many favourite books, is the truth of it. I mean, if you're going to like pin me down and torture me and say, name one favourite book, Andy, it would probably have to be Lord of the Rings, rather boringly. But it is that kind of like central fountainhead of fantasy fiction, if you will. I mean, it's not the only by any means, and it's not the first and it's not the last by any means either, but it's such a towering and titanic thing in its own right. Really overselling it here, aren't I? But I'd go for Lord of the Rings. But as I really wouldn't like to say that's my favourite book as an exclusive thing, because there's a lot of books that I really love.
Just a bonus question, what age were you when you first read that book, or those books?
Lord of the Rings, we were on holiday in Wales. I think I was older, 11, I think. So, reasonably advanced, and I could understand everything that's in there. But yeah, I was absolutely fascinated. Yeah, I did nothing else but read the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, while we were away on holiday. And I mean, I've been introduced to The Hobbit years before at junior school. One of our teachers there read as part of The Hobbit, the riddling specifically, and I'd read the whole book separately then, so I kind of had some grounding already. But yeah, Nazgul in the Shire and all that sort of thing. Woo! It was great stuff.
Who or what is your biggest inspiration in what you do?
I think we'll have to say Jervis Johnson for that, actually. Having worked with him a bit more again recently for the first time in 20 years. And honestly, the sensation of familiarity, of a yin and a yang locking together in the world of games design, he's always really inspired me by his approach to games design, his thoughtfulness and openness as well about it. So I've always kind of aspired to that as an inspirational sort of he is the one to follow. That will really embarrass me by saying that. We should get him on here, actually.
Yeah, I'd love that. Did he ever beat you in a game, ever?
Many times. We talked about this because it kind of bothered him after a while that it never even crossed my mind, because we used to play a lot, virtually daily when we could, but not always, but certainly weekly. And we did the first few battle reports, and it kind of became a thing. They were very, very popular. This is in White Dwarf magazine for people just tuning in. They were very popular, so it was like, brilliant, do more of those. People love them. And we're like, all right. So we started regularly doing a battle report for White Dwarf in once a month. And it never even crossed my mind, because I say we played a lot, and Jervis generally beat me. Not always, but quite often. He always came with a good army list and a good plan in mind. And I never had a plan. I just had an army and let chaos reign and work from there, basically. But after a while, he came to me and sort of said, it bothered me for a while that you always beat me in the battle reports, but I'm over it now. And it never even crossed my mind before that moment, frankly, that was happening. And I was like, huh. And it made me think about it, why that happened. And it's because the battle reports were always really chaotic affairs, because we had to stop and start, we had to take photos, we had to take notes. People would wander by all the time and give their sage advice to what we should be doing in the game and all this sort of stuff. And then we'd break for lunch, we'd come back and finish. So it was a hugely fractured game that we had to play in practice. And of course, that worked for me because I thrive on chaos, basically. And I didn't really have a plan in the first place. I'm just sort of like taking advantage of what's happening and doing sensible things. Whereas Jervis came in with a plan, and the plan kind of always fell apart because he couldn't keep concentration on that, as well as keep notes and well as take photos and all the other interruptions and stuff like that. So I think that's what screwed him over more than anything else, as well as just luck as well. I tended to be quite lucky on the dice. So he ended up with this thing where it's like, people with T-shirts on saying Jervis Johnson couldn't beat me either and stuff like this, which was still very hilarious, but a bit harsh on him because honestly, no, he's a great player. He beat me all the time, just not in a battle report, because extraneous circumstances meant that I was better at doing those than he was. But not through talent or anything like that, just through, as I say, I thrive on chaos, and that's true when I game in general. I don't generally have a plan.
What's your best value budget hobby purchase of less than £20?
Paint and brushes is what I'd invest £20 in, which won't go an awful long way these days. But honestly, good paint and a good brush are 70-80% of painting a miniature well, in my opinion. With some of the remainder a good undercoat actually as well. And if you haven't got good ones of those, it does make your life so much harder, and it's so much more of a disappointing experience. So I feel they're the things that give back the most in terms of investing in, putting money into it, rather than any, magnifier or some special bit of kit like that, which you can pick up that cheaply sometimes. I could never get on with them personally. But yeah, put it into some decent materials is really what it comes down to, because they will pay off. They are so much nicer to use, especially modern acrylic paints are just amazing. I started off when I was a nipper, we were using Humbrol paints. So they're like basically little oil paints and things like this. I would use white spirits with it, stuff like that. So the modern sort of like water-soluble paints are just stunning. I haven't got into airbrushing. I kind of mean to at some point. You probably need more than 20 quid for that. But from what I'm seeing, the results people are getting with the modern airbrushes and more to the point paint you can get for them are very, very good. So, but at a fundamental, paint and brushes, mate, that'll pay off. Don't worry.
If you could live in any historical period, where, when, and why?
I wouldn't go far. I'm a great student of history, as anybody who knows me will tell you. And I've read a great deal about history, admittedly mostly military history, but that's social history as well. And I have to say, I'd like, if I was going to go back, I'd go back to the 1990s, or the 1980s, perhaps, and not really any further than that, because life was not better in those days, except for a very select few who, wrote books about it and things like that we get to read now. But for the vast majority of people, no, we live like gods as far as they're concerned. And I'd rather keep hold of that than take my chances and go back in time and like, are you an aristocrat? Do you get tuberculosis? And so on.
Yeah, get a sword in the gut within 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, smallpox, all kinds of fun ways to meet your end, and not much help to be had for them as well in comparison to the modern world. So, yeah, I'm a great student of history, but I have no particular desire to live in it.
Do you think there are any underutilized settings or periods in tabletop gaming?
Yeah. The ancient world, the truly ancient world, as in Assyrian Empire, Egypt, Hittites, and so on. I think that's underutilized. Because people assume it's, I don't know, too basic, just guys in nappies with sticks or something like that, and it's not. It's not at all like that. It's actually a very sophisticated period of history. We just don't know an awful lot about it. But I feel that doesn't see enough, because it's proper like Conan-esque fantasy when you get down to it, and that doesn't see enough leverage. I think the whole cradle of civilization, Babylon, all that sort of stuff, which are some evocative terms just to throw around, just to say those words. So I think that gets underutilized.
What might people be surprised to hear that you're not very good at?
Oh, this is the one. When I briefly looked over your list of questions earlier on, that actually stood out in my mind of like when I thought about different answers for this. Things I'm not very good at, there's a lot of these, which may probably not surprise most people. One that might surprise people I'm not good at is I'm not good at chess. I'm not good at playing chess. I understand how to play. I have played many times. I am not good at it. And I think it's because of what I said earlier on, is I kind of thrive on chaos when I'm gaming, and there isn't any of that in chess at all. And I like the patience to be able to develop a plan over a period of time. I've had a few rounds with Go as well, which is, again, a fascinating concept of a game, but kind of not for me, is what it boils down to. And I accept that. I don't thrive on long-term building towards a plan in that way in my gaming, but that's okay. As I've come to realize, there are many different kinds of gamers. There are many different kinds of games. And it's finding the ones that suit you, really. So yeah, that's my first one. Things I'm not good at. The other one I would actually list is that I can't run to save my life, despite the fitness thing that we talked about briefly earlier on. I am decently fit, but I've always had asthma, and I've also got a duff leg from a motorcycle accident, and I smoke. So if the zombies come for me, they're going to get me. I won't get 100 yards, basically. So they were the two things that came to mind about things I am not good at.
When was the last time something in the hobby surprised you?
The success of a Masters of the Universe board miniatures game that Archon did. That apparently has landed really, really well. And I don't know why I imagine Masters of the Universe wouldn't cut the mustard in some fashion. But I think one of the things that's been remarkable, actually, that surprised me in general, if I'm honest, but over a period of decades, is how fast and furious games come out now compared to when I started out, because it was a long, tedious process to make games back then. And it's become, this is not to denigrate what's being made now, because it's marvelous content. There's just so much more of it. And it's because digital publishing and print, and particularly now digital miniature making, has really accelerated the process just massively. And you can't imagine how fast it is compared to what an old dodgering grognard type like me is used to. So that, I think, at its heart, if I trace back from Master of the Universe tabletop game, it's because of that, and that now can reach the point where we do a Master of the Universe tabletop game, or G.I. Joe, or whatever, just for funsies, basically, because it's possible. It doesn't have to be this massive industrial investment process to get to that point. Between Kickstarter and the aforementioned capabilities, small studios can do just about anything. So on some levels, the games that come out all the time kind of surprise me, because it's like, what? And it's like, and they often do quite well. It's like, well, more power to them, really.
Tell me something that's true that almost nobody agrees with you on.
I think at its heart, it'll be that desire for randomness, because people often rail against randomness, luck, being a part of their games. Whereas I think of it myself as being an essential ingredient in a game. Like I say, you go back to things like chess and Go, I'm kind of like, all right, it doesn't fire me in quite the same way. That being said, how you handle it in your games, obviously key to whether it just feels like random chance or whether you have some control over what's going on and how much control and how much the fatal finger of fate can fuck you as well. So that would probably be the biggest bone of contention I can think of on a really meta level that most people might have with me and designing games the way I do. But tough, that's the way I do it. Don't like it, go design your own games, which people do, which is fantastic. It's one of the things I've had to accept about myself is I design the way I design. And some people like that and some people don't. But that's okay.
Tell me something you once believed about the hobby that turned out not to be true.
One thing I used to believe about the hobby that turned out not to be true, I go, you go systems are good. Which, I don't know, on some fundamental level, I kind of sort of believe that, but I used to passionately believe it and fight back against every attempt to do other things. Because I thought it was good for you to be able to use your whole army and, work to a plan, ironically enough. And then the opponent used theirs. But actually, in practice, most of the time, it's a bad idea because it kind of disassociates one person at a time from having much of an active role in the game for too long. And as I've got older and perhaps a little bit wiser, I've realized that's important. You've got two people at the table. You need to make sure they're both having a good time, two or more people at the table. And you need to make sure they're both having a good time on a reasonable sort of tempo. And I go, you go often fights against that, unless it's such a limited number of units that you can get through your turn very quickly, or the increments are really tiny, or both. So there are circumstances where you still do it, but am I as committed to it as I once was? No, I am not. A lot of crunch, actually, to be fair, that I inflicted on gamers back in the 90s when I was working on things like 40k. These days, I wouldn't do that now because, crunch, by which I mean, lots of modifiers, lots of die rolling, comparing die rolling, having to do maths in relation to your dice and things like that. It was something I just didn't hesitate about back then. I just thought, oh, cool. Different way of doing things. And that in itself as well, too many different ways of doing things. These are all kind of bad, actually, as part of a design. You need to be a lot more disciplined about it. And I mean, referencing back to Jervis again, that's one of the things I admire him for. He is very disciplined about factors like that and considering it properly, which is something I've learned to do over time, but I didn't used to. Sorry about that, guys. It was kind of made fun, wacky games, though. I'll give it that much.
Are there any common hobby myths and misconceptions that make you roll your eyes?
The way people treat dice as if they will follow probabilities when I'm going to tell you guys, after 30 years of working with dice, they don't. You can make some broad assumptions about what may be possible by doing that, but don't get too locked into the idea that the handful of dice you roll over the course of the game will somehow fit in with probability that's worked out over thousands of instances. Thousands and thousands of instances to get that sort of like perfect bell curve or what have you. You pick up your dice once in the game and roll them. The dice don't know anything about bell curves. They'll just give you something entirely random. And, over time, the probabilities will tend to emerge in a general direction of the way that, those probabilities would tell you. But only by rolling enough dice. And they don't always obey those probabilities at all. So that's the thing that makes me roll my eyes the most, that people make such massive assumptions about a 16% difference, for example. The classics of hitting on a 3+ or hitting on a 4+ and how much difference that makes. It's like, it makes way more difference how many dice you're rolling, guys. Way more. So that sort of stuff is the thing that I tend to like, because it just gets treated as such an iron cast rule And what particularly amused me, there was a great, what was it on? It was on Daka Daka, I think, years ago now. Somebody had tested different dice. He was a guy who taught engineering students, and basically he'd got hold of a few thousand like Games Workshop dice and casino dice and things like that, and he tested them to see what they rolled, set it as a job for his students. So they got big shaker tables, and they just went through and recorded the results. And he found that the chances on it was specifically the standard like little white D6 that you get in Games Workshop games, common around the world. That one is. That's why it's in there. The chances of rolling a 1 on that was somewhere around 23%. Now, technically, it should be 16. So something's amiss there. The best ones he found were the casino dice, ironically enough. And they were actually, within the proper relative probability, but even they varied a bit. So even that, you can take statistical probability at face value and so forth, but it still doesn't necessarily apply to the tools that you're using. So that end of thing, that's what I think people tend to blow past a little bit when they're talking about balance and probability, chances of things happening or not happening. It's not quite in the realm of everything's just a coin flip, really, guys, but it's kind of headed there, more so than most people give it credit for, anyway. It's been one of the fun things about Xeogenesis, actually. That uses D10s. Now, I've had, like I say, 30-year career of designing almost exclusively with D6s all that time. I have a long, intimate relationship with the D6 in all kinds of different forms. And moving to D10s was just like madness personified. We're using D10 dice pools. And, I mean, D6s, like I say, they're a lot more unpredictable than you think they are. But they kind of have their parameters. If you roll enough of them, they'll generally, etc. D10s is like starting over again. So that's been exciting times, grappling with how truly random rolling like 4 or 5 D10s can be, because we're not totaling scores. It's individual target numbers. The model has a target number to hit it, so you try to roll that or above. So roll me 5 D10 and tell me how many of them are 8+. It's like, none of them. All of them. Most of them. Just, so that's been good to account for overall, a new challenge.
Are there any particularly satisfying mechanics you've either created yourself or came across whilst playing someone else's game?
I'm going to nominate myself for this one, actually. The blast marker mechanic that we introduced in Epic initially, I think. Which is just thing about having little explosion markers next to a unit to show, and it's another stage of damage at its heart, but it's not removing models. It's just showing that they're kind of like being suppressed under fire, that sort of a thing. And it's been used in quite a few different game systems since then. I've used it a few times myself since then. And it's a good mechanic. It's a useful tool to have when you're designing a game, to have that other stage of damage, which isn't actually killing things or knocking off hit points per se. Basically like a temporary damage source which suppresses them or whatever. So conceptually, I think that's a good one. The other one I'd nominate is the system that I use in Blood Red Skies for doing 3-dimensional combat with, because that's a World War II fighter combat game, but it doesn't use altitude or anything like that. It uses this the system I call the advantage system, where it says we don't care about how high up you are. Basically, it's like, are you at an advantage relative to the fight? Are you neutral relative to the fight? Or are you disadvantaged relative to the fight? Being advantaged means that you have more options, basically. Being disadvantaged means you have less. And it's only if you're disadvantaged, you're actually in danger of being shot down. Until that point, you're just ducking and diving along with everybody else, but in a disadvantaged state, that's where you're most vulnerable as well. So again, it's a way of almost combining damage with other factors at the same time, but without it actually being damage to the unit. So I think that's another particularly kind of interesting example of almost the same, if you go on a very meta level, conceptual design mechanic applied in a different way.
What are the last couple of games you've actually played?
Slip Runners, which is a game I'm developing for the Xenogenesis universe, which is, we're starting to roll it out. We appeared at a few shows and things like that. It's basically like a anime-inspired mecha-based combat game. But Slip Runners is actually a spaceship game that I forced onto it because we're going to publish it through Blaster Magazine. They publish periodically, and they do little games, and it's literally like a spaceship racing game. But we've tied it into the background for the universe. So I've been testing that quite a lot. That's the last few games I've actually had have all been of that. And before that was Xenogenesis itself, the mecha combat game. Sorry, they're not mecha, they're not that big. They're the giant armored suit fighting combat game that we're doing, which is very familiar territory. It's like, 32 mil figures. So that's kind of like that's a tactical, which is the smallest armored suits. And they go up from there, basically. But we mostly be fighting with tacticals and mediums so far. And I've been working on that with Gav Thorpe, who's doing the background side of things as well. So, yeah, we've been playing a fair bit of that as well on the tabletop realm.
When building a regiment, do you prefer monopose or multi-pose miniatures?
It depends on the troops and it depends on the game, is the honest truth of that. I mean, there's some where monopose is absolutely right. If you're doing pikemen or something like that, you don't want multi-part models for that. But if I'm doing, a war band of some description, whatever flavor you want to call it, then yeah, I want multi-pose figures. So yeah, depends on the troop type is the response to that one.
Yeah, monopose zombies, that would look a bit weird, wouldn't it? We'll get the same.
Yeah, exactly. You're entirely missing the point with monopose zombies. Especially with plastic miniatures, which I love. Part of the fun is, cutting them around and making them your own. So, yeah. But on the other hand, like I say, if I'm doing a very regimented kind of a unit, then I've got no problem with them being in a regimental poses at all. It depends on what it is. As a rule, I prefer multi-part. It's actually, I was talking about Xenogenesis. That's one of the things for it, is that we were doing injection molded plastic and trying to make them a bit more, flexible, posable, choose your own weapons, choose your own bits to go on them for part of that fun modeling aspect of it, because it's kind of started to vanish a little bit, and I'm sad about that, because for me that's very much part of the hobby. That's like making things your own. So it's good to be in a position to hopefully give some of that back again.
Do you prefer metal, resin, or plastic?
I'd pick plastic every time. If I can have all my needs supplied in plastic, I'll take it in plastic, thanks, because it's the easiest to work with out of all three of those. I don't have anything against metal miniatures. I don't have anything against resin miniatures either. But if I have the option, then yeah, because plastic's just hilariously easy to cut up and stick back together in different forms and stuff like that. I mean, I used to do it with metal, because as far as I was concerned, again, because I'm ancient, super glue's been quite the wonder for me, and hot glue guns. It's like, ha, you can't stop me now. But if you're using plastic, you get away from 90% of that issue straight away. You can just so easily put things together, so easily shave off any bits of flash that you don't want and all the rest of it, that it's honestly a joy to work with.
Do you prefer a black, white, or zenithal undercoat?
It depends what's going to go onto it next. If it's bright colours, I always use white. If it's darker colours, I'm fine using black. I mean, I used to use black undercoat forever. It was always what I used to use, and then just kind of work up from there, because I say I came from a background where originally I was painting in hub rolls, so black undercoat wasn't such an issue there. It is more of an issue for acrylic paints, though. So what I've actually landed up is I tend to use grey quite a lot now, because that's a middle ground between the two. You can darken it down easily enough, or bring it up easily enough without having to go through quite as many layers as using a black undercoat. So I feel like that's a fairly happy compromise.
Do you have a typical basing strategy? Do you like the golf course, or do you like them to be busy with rocks and skulls? And
Yeah, somewhere between the two. I do believe that a base can be too busy, and then it starts to distract from the miniature that's standing on it. So to me, the miniature is the star, not the base. So I don't like overly complicated bases. A lot of people have ones that are like metal grids and things like that. I don't tend to like things like that, unless it's specifically for an environment where that's entirely appropriate, sort of thing. But yeah, I'm not fond of guys who look like they're lugging around a load of stuff on their base onto the battlefield. It should disappear as much as possible, as far as I'm concerned.
do you have any advice for those who want to follow your path?
Yes, I get asked this reasonably often, actually. The biggest thing is do it. Don't be too hesitant. There is just a monster mash of opportunity out there now. In some ways, it's a lot easier and it's a lot harder than when I started out. Because when I started out, there were very, 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 very few companies making games, and they were all companies. So getting a foot in the door there and working your way up and as I did, that's I say both harder and easier to do now because there are more companies doing that. But at the same time, there's more people aware and more people interested in it. There's a whole generation, basically, that's been fired up by the idea of doing games and gaming and has much better tools for doing it with than when I started out. But that being said, you have much better tools for doing it with. So write your rules, stick them on a PDF, put them out on the internet, find supportive groups where they're interested in similar things. Social media's given this amazing, amazing capability of linking people across the world in a way that we couldn't even dream of back then. So, leverage that. And, if you make it, they will come over time. And either someone will pop up and say, hey, I can make miniatures. Do you want me to make miniatures for your game? We should try and do this. And you can start cobbling it together that way. Or you can take it to a company and say, look, I've done these things already. Give me a go. I can work with you guys, etc. So I think the opportunity's out there, but the biggest thing's got to be to do it. Don't think about doing it, but do it. That can be tougher than it sounds. I understand that.
Big thanks to Andy for taking the time to chat with me way back in 2023. And if you're listening to this around the time of release, you probably have a few more days to get your clip in for the hobby progress update that we're going to do for May 2026. So you could submit a clip by going to bedroombattlefields.com/voicemail, get them in before the end of the month, and make sure your own hobby progress and accountability stuff gets in that episode and all your peers out there know that you've been doing stuff. So that link again is bedroombattlefields.com/voicemail. Right, thanks as always for listening. I always appreciate your ears, and I look forward to speaking again on the next one.